Hey everybody, and welcome as we continue our series on Lent. Because yes, it is still Lent. I know. Lent doesn't go away because of any virus, and in fact, Easter will not go away. No matter where we can and can't gather on Easter morning, no matter what else is going on, come Easter, that tomb is going to be empty. The coronavirus does not have the power to stop Easter. Christ will be risen no matter what else is going on in the world, and that is a wonderful thing to be able to count on when so much else is up in the air and uncertain. So I think it's important that we continue on this Lenten journey as we head toward the promise of Easter that we need this year perhaps more than any time in recent memory. So let's continue with our Lenten series. It's a nice song, but it's hard to sing. And this is the one where the Pharisees are kind of trying to trap Jesus again, and they asked him to name the most important commandment. And Jesus said, well, there's two. And the first one is you love the Lord God with all your heart and might and soul. Love God with your whole self. And then he says, and the second one is to love your neighbor. Now, when I was planning this series, I thought what I would be talking about today is the intellectual, emotional, spiritual barriers that keep us from loving our neighbor. Things like, how do we love difficult people? How do we love people who make us uncomfortable? People whose core beliefs are so radically different than ours. How do we do that? I didn't think I'd be talking logistics, which is what I am going to talk about today, because I think that is a question that is nagging, plaguing, bothering all of us these days, is how do we love our neighbor in a time where we are being asked to socially distance ourselves from one another, to not gather together. It is, if you have been a Christian for long, and if you've ever been a member of a church, when a crisis hits, our instinct is to gather. And here we are in a time and a place where we're being told that is the very last thing we want to do. Or that's even the very last thing we can do. So how do we love our neighbors in this era of COVID-19? Well, I think the first thing, logistically, is to stay at home if you possibly can, to follow the government and the CDC guidelines for your community, wherever you are. I am in New York City, and it's gotten pretty restrictive here. There are people, of course, who cannot stay at home. Their jobs require them to be out and about. But if you can, follow those guidelines and let's keep our neighbors safe. There are, as I mentioned, those people who can't stay at home, whose jobs require them to go out and about. Specifically, our medical personnel and our medical support personnel, our first responders, and all sorts of other people that you might not think of. Another way that we can love our neighbor is to let those people who cannot stay at home, who cannot isolate, let them know how much they are appreciated, because their service does put them in harm's way. And so we need to let our medical personnel, all of the people, our first responders, and a myriad of other people who go out to serve our neighborhoods, let them know how much they are appreciated. That's another way you can love your neighbor. Another thing we can do right now is, if you don't know already, food pantries need food. And I know we're all worried that there's not going to be enough. And that's the next thing I want us to do, that I think we have to do in order to be a good neighbor, in order to love our neighbor, and that is to practice enough. To practice a theology of abundance, the belief that there will be enough, that we do not have to hoard, that we can share what we have with those who need it, and we will be okay. So I think during this time where people are hoarding and stockpiling and leaving others without, it's really important that we practice a theology of abundance and know that there will be enough so that we can share with those who need it most. Whether it is food or hand sanitizer or toilet paper or those specialty masks that hospitals are asking for. If you have them, please take them to your local hospital. They need them desperately. So practice a theology of abundance during this time. I know it's hard because the world is going to scream scarcity at us, but if we really want to love our neighbor, let's practice what Walter Brueggemann calls a theology of abundance, a belief that there will be enough so that we can share with our neighbor. And then finally, if we're going to love our neighbor, and this may be the hardest of all, is we need to practice kindness and patience and grace. Everyone is doing this for the first time. My daughter has had to come home from college and will not be going back this semester. And her university is scrambling to figure out how to get everybody moved out of the dorms, how to set up online classes for people who study lab sciences or, like my daughter, musical theater. They're scrambling. They're doing the best they can. Your local school that's let out is doing the same thing, trying to figure out online classes. Parents who have suddenly found themselves homeschooling their children, something I would be a complete disaster at. They are trying to figure out what this new normal is going to look like. Everybody is struggling right now. So let's offer some kindness and some patience, and let's offer grace to people when they screw something up or make a poor choice. Let's offer kindness and patience and grace. And not only would I ask you to extend that to your neighbor as a way of loving your neighbor, but extend it to yourself as well. You may be one of those parents who's homeschooling right now. You may be somebody who's already taking care of someone who's been ill long before the coronavirus ever hit, and this has just complicated your situation. You may be struggling because there's no income coming in. You may be one of those people who has to leave the house, who has to go to work, and don't know what you're going to do with your children who suddenly aren't in school. Everyone is struggling. And so not only be gentle and patient and gracious with others, do the same for yourself. We are all just doing the best we can right now. So check in with your neighbors, with the people you know and love, to make sure they're okay. See if there's anything that they need that you can help them with. And here's one that might be really important for our older neighbors. Technology is such a gift right now as we are trying to stay connected with people. And some of our older neighbors may not be as adept at technology as some of the rest of us are. Some of them will be more adept. But those who are struggling to be able to use technology to stay in touch with their kids and their grandkids and their friends, if you are not showing any symptoms and are healthy and they're healthy and they could use a little tech help, I encourage you to offer that tech support. It could mean more than you will ever know for people to be able to stay connected in that way to the people they love. So share what you have. Know that there will be enough. Practice kindness and patience and grace, and give help when you can. Let us love our neighbors during this difficult time as we continue our journey towards Easter together.